healing, burnout, and the state of therapy in Malaysia. Let's talk about it. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It podcast by SafeTalk, where we speak all things mental health related. I am your co-host Shafkat, and in our previous episodes, we've spoken about the role of technology in mental health, data privacy, how to get started with therapy, and many, many more. If that's something of your interest, feel free to check out our previous episodes. Today, we are taking a step back and looking at therapy overall as an industry, as what's happening, what's the current state of mental health, especially in Malaysia. We all know that the demand for therapy has risen a lot since 2020, since COVID. More people are open about it, speaking about it, and more people are even attending therapy. But with that fast growth come some challenges and some problems even maybe they're on the way. So today, this episode is designed for therapists and mental health professionals. We have some honest reflections about and personal stories, some practical advice on how to get a personal practice running, what therapists can do to reclaim their value, and overall, what collectively we can do as a society, as mental health professionals, and those who are doing the tech in mental health space to create a more sustainable future. And to have this conversation with me today is Jun Wei. Hi, Jun Wei. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. Awesome. All right. So just to give you a bit of a background, Jun Wei is a licensed counselor and PhD candidate at the University of Hong Kong. He also specializes in working with LGBTQ plus clients, and he has presented his research and clinical work in top LGBTQ plus and counseling international conferences. And currently, he also runs his small-scale private practice online. But the reason why we have Jun Wei here in the studio is because if you follow him on his social media, especially on LinkedIn, he does a lot of advocacy work about the state of mental health in Malaysia. He's spoken about the burnout that therapists are going through, whether therapists are charging the right cost for the therapy, and many, many more. So today we will be focusing mostly on that. So just to get started, Jun Wei, maybe a little bit you can share what got you interested to speak about the pricing and the sustainability of therapy in Malaysia.
Right. What got me started with all this is because I think we don't really learn about like pricing and stuff in our counseling course. But as I get into it and as I'm coming to paying for my own supervision, and I was thinking like, the maths, I feel like it doesn't add up, but I don't know what's wrong. So I was like, maybe I should learn more about pricing. And that's how I got all this started.
I understand. I think it's very, very important because you've mentioned, and I'm sure we'll get into this later in the conversation, but if therapists don't charge right, this could hurt the whole industry, and this could, hurt the whole therapy, how the state of it is in Malaysia. And I think it's very, very important that you bring this conversation up, and I'm sure you get a lot of engagement as well from people from industry also now want to talk because of you. So thank you doing that incredible work. And so just to get also kind of this conversation going, like you mentioned that there were, for longest time that you were working at a loss, right? What kind of finally pushed you to look into your cost and to really consider that, oh, maybe I am charging low?
Right. So part of the thing that I'm doing right now, because I received a scholarship package from the University of Hong Kong, so I can offer the counseling course, as in counseling services at a discounted price and all that. I don't mind because I've got scholarship to cover me. But as I'm coming to at the point of almost graduating from my PhD, and then I was like, okay, so I need to be more careful with my finances. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe I need to calculate this. And that's when I realized everything was,
I
scary.
understand. I'm sure once you look at it, it's a whole different world opened
Yeah.
up for you. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of especially administrative costs, right? I think I read you mentioned before that comes into this. So what are some of the administrative costs that therapists overlook when they think about, running a private practice or working in a center?
Right. So there are a lot of things that yesterday I look up into my notes and I just write it down. So things like, for example, me myself. So if I were to provide service for an hour, how much will I be paying myself? And also, let's say if I'm doing some payment gateway. So let's say if this is a credit card they're paying by credit card. The bank will charge us a few percent on it, right? Or let's say you use other service providers, they are also going to charge you on it. A lot of us use Zoom nowadays, right? Zoom subscription per month or per year. And of course, training and supervision. And let's say you have a website is expensive as well, right? And domain, and you need to pay people to help you to do all that stuff. And also insurance, membership fees, let's say for Lembaga Counselor license and all other membership fees, and your business registration, accounting, your equipment, electricity, internet, and also like one thing that we often miss out is, let's say, the time you spend on replying to clients' email or just writing down notes, intake session.
I see.
Yeah,
I understand.
it's a
So,
lot.
so what you mean is that when you, let's say, if I'm a therapist, I'm charging, I can't only think, okay, I'm going to do a session for an hour. You're not really charging for that hour. You're charging, as you mentioned, follow-up emails. Let's say if it's 15 minutes follow-ups, you need to include that cost in that hour. Is that how it works? Or
It's kind of
yeah,
like we by right we were taught, that is not part of our work, but that is like a hidden cost that we pay as therapists. We contribute to that, right, without charging clients on that. But we need to be more mindful about how much time we're spending with each case. Even when you are writing emails, let's say you write an hour to just reply to an email, right? And how much of that is a hidden cost that we don't factor in, because our time is limited, right? Plus, as a therapist, you want to really conserve your energy to really provide for therapy sessions. Yeah.
I understand. Is there like just, I know it's kind of a randomly, not suddenly coming out question, but is there any amount that all of the things that you listed down, which were so many, honestly, is like 10 items, is there any cost to all of them? Like what is roughly estimate the cost of all of that? Or are we looking like few thousands, ringgit more or?
So
Yeah,
I calculated it. So per annum, how much am I paying
right.
for all that? And then I divide by, let's say, per month. Ideally, I want to do how many sessions, and with that, how much will it cost for each session?
I understand. Okay. And just another follow-up question, like nowadays, I'm sure there's a lot of subscription cost and all, especially when it comes to tech. I mean, I come from a tech background. AI is becoming a very common thing, but there's a lot of like apps that say that they simplify and they do things, and this is what we at SafeTalk do as well. Do those things help to reduce these costs or not really?
I believe it does. Let's say, if I were to do an intake session, when I first started, I tell you, I spent like, I don't know, like 8-10 hours to just write the client's intake. Because back then I was still in training, so I don't care,
I see.
time is no matter. But after, when I come out to work, and I was like, oh, that's not sustainable. So I believe with tech help, it really save up a lot of the administrative time. And remember, our having to spend our time to just write case note, that is very draining as well, right? If we can really save the time on that'd be great.
I understand. That's true. I mean, definitely modern technology helps to make things easier. But as you mentioned, those things like Zoom is still Zoom. Everybody uses it. And accounting costs and website costs, these are still there. They might have slightly gone on in price than they were, but still, they're costs that a therapist needs to consider when running their own practice or doing a session. So, yeah. Okay. So, kind of continuing on the tail end of that, right? So now therapists, let's say, as you mentioned, they need to think about all of these costs when they charge per session. But when it comes to therapy, it's and I've heard this in other podcasts as well. It's kind of considered like a noble work. I know it is still end of the day. It's a service that's provided. So it shouldn't be thought of that way. But people, therapists would feel guilty, like, oh, I shouldn't charge too much because I'm helping, and they feel guilty about it. And you mentioned that in your LinkedIn post as well, and I read. So can you just share a little bit about why does that guilt exist, and is there anything that can be done to kind of overcome that?
Right. I think me myself, of course, I was raised in that background. And of course, I would think that, oh, we shouldn't be charging too high as well. But there's a caveat there, is that when you look at what is available in the market, you will realize that there are people charging 2-3K for you to just go there and cry.
Yeah.
Those kind of courses. So if they can provide a place for you to cry 2-3 days and charge you 2K, 3K. So compared to our therapy services, we are actually charging very, very, very low. and they just let you cry. But what's the reason behind letting you cry? Does it really solve anything?
I understand. I think, yeah, I mean, definitely, I 100% agree with you. One thing is the previously you mentioned it's clients when they attend therapy and if they think it's expensive, they don't think all the costs that comes afterwards, right? All the work that you need to do, like you fully dedicate. It's not just that hour; it's all the work before and that comes afterwards as well. So therapists shouldn't really feel guilty, right? Because they are doing all that work and they deserve to be paid fairly for that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Though I want to put a caveat there is that clients might see it differently. They'll be thinking like that is your cost, your problem. Right? I don't care about it. So instead of talking about what is the cost that is required for us to run a session, we might want to think about what is the value that we're providing for clients, because that is what they really that is what will motivate them be willing to pay for it.
I understand. Perfect. Maybe that's something we can kind of go into next. I think also I would like to discuss with you is like, how does a therapist think about like, the value of the service they are providing, right? Is it based on the university degree they have? Is it all the certifications they've gotten for specific therapy specializations, or how do they, go about concluding that price?
Right. Usually, let's say most of what I see is I'm a Master of Counseling graduate, and so I will be charging this fee. Okay. But, and then they will start to stock up even more and more certificates, charging the same price. Yeah. Okay. So, which means that you provide added value without raising your charges, which means that you are giving yourself a deflation there. Yeah, because you're saying that you are paying me the same amount of money for more value. What does that mean? Right.
All right. But in terms of, let's say, communicating with a client, right? How do you communicate that to the client? Do you put the certifications on your website you mentioned, or how it was more like practical tips, like how it can be done?
So I did that. I did that. I showed like a list of certificates, but I can tell you, it makes no difference, because to them they're like, what is this? What is emotion focused therapy? They don't understand it. Right? You got certified. Okay. And so how does it relate to me? Right? So you need to communicate. Let's say if I get this certificate in emotion focused therapy, what does that mean? What can you solve? What kind of problem can you solve for me? Yeah, you need to communicate that part.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think it's the most important thing is it's definitely important to communicate that part, but also like to have these kind of conversations. I feel like, especially you, for example, you are very open about it. You speak about it on your social media. You bring these problems up, because even let's say somebody, myself, like I work more or less in the mental health field, but I'm not a therapist myself, and some of the things I didn't even know about, like for instance, accounting fees and all that's something that I didn't really think about. So I feel for you to openly speak about this, to educate people, is they will kind of see and understand it even more. And while definitely it can help for therapists to do their part, but at the same time, as the industry needs, these things need to be openly discussed as well. So I think that is very great. Kind of want to talk about supervision, which also you mentioned in your discussions as well. Is that so? What happens that when therapists do not charge enough, it kind of leads to a downward spiral, right? So maybe a little bit you can talk about that.
Right. That when I think about it is, I actually asked around my friends like, hey, do you all go for supervision and stuff? They say that, oh, we do peer supervision, which means that you have therapist, I'm therapist. Let's just talk about it together. Yeah. I think this is a way to help save costs, of course. But also I see a bigger problem is when people are charging too low. Let's say 50, 70, 80 ringgit per session. And this is not in NGO, but like really private practice. And with that low amount of charges, how can they afford for even a supervision session? Yeah. So let's say me myself back then, I need to do like 2.5 sessions to just afford for one supervision. I was like, oh my God, how do I survive? Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
I understand. And what it does in the long term, right, is if you cannot afford to go to supervision, it kind of it could potentially affect the quality, like you don't get the right guidance and can bring the service down, quality of the service down, which can, create mistrust. I think you highlighted that as
Yeah,
well.
it's because when you don't receive good quality of supervision, it's easy for us to be in the delusion that, oh, we are so great, we are the best, because there is no one there to really look at what we are doing, right? So we are in our own fantasy world. But clients may be thinking like, okay, they don't feel good, and what Malaysians usually do, they just disappear. They won't reply to you, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
True. So, yeah, I think that's kind of also contributes. There's something that at least as clients, let's say as general public, to be informed about is that this is what one of the costs the therapist has to bear beside whatever is being paid in the therapy session itself. Okay, kind of continuing on that. Also, I think does this. So let's say if therapists charge low and they feel demotivated, does this kind of create a notion where therapists kind of feel burnout and
Oh,
with the industry?
yes, definitely. So a lot of people say that because look, we aren't able to charge as much, and so and there is limited places for counselors to work at, because yeah, comparing maybe like 1980s when they start to have more counselors and stuff, as compared to now, we are still competing with the same pool of clients. It's a limited pool, and no one really try to expand, right? You don't see a lot of like outreach services telling people what is counseling and what problem can we solve, right? So everyone is just fighting for that small piece of cake and not trying to make the cake, the pie, to be larger. So it's going to be a very, very fierce and unhealthy competition here.
I understand. And but like let's say if you look at the reality, like while it is important that we're having this conversation about like charging for the right price and all. At the same time, the reality is that some therapists are still probably undercharging. Like you yourself mentioned that, like you for years you worked with like like sponsored your own supervision and all. What kept you going during those times? Yeah.
Once again, I was just one of those kids, and
Yeah.
I don't think about economics and stuff. And then I'm also not keeping tab on my finances until to this point where I realized that, hey, I've got nothing else. I can really go broke right now. I need to
Yeah.
really look at it, and that's when I realized, hey, the math just doesn't add up, because like I spent much, 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 much more after my master degree to learn a ton of things. And I was still charging the same. And I was asking myself, something's wrong here. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think, yeah, I think it's hopefully, these discussions that we are having, they will contribute maybe, like this will encourage more people to talk about it. And overall, this can help, to bring the value of therapy up and, therapists get paid more fairly for the services, for the hard work that they provide. Definitely. Okay, so maybe would be like one advice that you would give to a therapist who wants to raise their prices but afraid that client will not be happy or they might lose some clients. How would you say to them?
Right.
Mhm.
I think that's a difficult question to answer, but
Mm.
I'll try my best
Sure.
here. I need to write this down because this is so complicated.
Understand.
I think don't make being affordable as your only label that you have on yourself. And sorry.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah. And you won't believe it, but there are senior therapists who is charging really high and they still have a lot of clients.
See.
Yeah.
So
There are a lot of things that's not being spoken in this field.
I understand. So I guess end of the day it comes because those people who charge a lot and still get clients. I guess what they did right was communicate the value or build that trust, and I think that's very, very important to do. And yeah, and let's say in a hypothetical scenario where we had a culture where therapists are truly price based, charging based on their skill, on their experience and all. And what would change? Like how would it affect overall how mental health is, therapy is, and all?
I think it will make a
Yeah.
big difference because let's say because Lembaga counselor also set a limit, like if you're this master degree, this is the best amount of price you can charge and nothing go beyond that. But come on, that was set in like I think 2012, and compared to now, just think about our inflation.
Right.
Right, it's insane. But if we take off that cap and just really allow the market will regulate itself. right?
I understand.
Based on how much they think this person is worth, they're willing to pay, everything will come to be a more healthier field because people will see that there is chance for me to climb up the ladder of income. They will try to strive harder, and we will have even more better therapists.
I understand. That's true, definitely. But I feel maybe the way things are going, as I said, like, therapy is becoming more widely spoken about and there's more awareness about it. Hopefully that will help, LKM to kind of relook at it and reconsider those ceiling prices that they've put. And, as you said, the inflation is very high. Prices are not the same that they were like 13 years ago, right? Everything is so much more expensive, especially in the last 5 years. So that'd be a good point. Okay, I think we had an interesting conversation about, like a burnout and supervision, and also like what should be the true value of a therapy session. And maybe is anything last message that you want to share to therapists, those who are just getting started, maybe those who feel tired, underpaid, any advice, word of advice?
Right. I think one of the things that I really want to bring up right now is also how a lot of people they just market themselves as, let's say, I'm a counselor. Who else is not? Right? You have got a master degree, I've got a master degree, so there is no difference. But really think about it. There is so much of opportunity in Malaysia. You don't need to just think about, I'm just a generalist. You can go into different specialization. Let's say I just work with parents of ADHD child. That is a big population, and find me a counselor that do that.
I understand. So it's more like about finding your niche, really, like specializing in one thing rather than doing something very, very broad. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, thank you so much. I think, there's nothing else on my end. I think it was an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts. And I think it's incredible. If anybody is interested to kind of know more or, have a more conversation with you, can follow Jun Wei on LinkedIn. He speaks there a lot about these topics, and maybe you can share where the people can find you and speak to you if they want to ask questions or just have a chat with you. Yeah,
Sure, I'll drop that in a link.
absolutely. We'll leave the links at the bottom of this video so you can follow up. And thank you so much again. It's a Let's Talk About It podcast by SafeTalk. Thank you so much for listening to us, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.